award for highest percentage of every Rotarian every year. So I really like, we're going to be talking about that and some other things. So it's going to be fun. Yeah.
Good.
So yeah, please register.
Perfect. That's great. Everybody will get started in a minute or two. So in the meantime, make sure that you go out and register, sign in the chat. And that way Devin will add you to our attendance for today.
Okay. All right.
Great to see everybody. I love kind of scrolling through the screen and seeing everybody show up. And all right. It's a lovely sunny day out there and great warm weather again, which is just fabulous that we've had such a lovely little week. Now, who knows what next week will bring, right? But in the meantime, make sure you go outside, make sure you get a walk in, take advantage of the warm weather while we can.
No kidding. Next week is an abrupt end.
Oh, is it?
I think it's Monday or something. It takes a nosedive. I'm sending my children outside as much as humanly possible for the following days because we're going to be locked inside together.
Yeah, but if it snows on Monday, you can take them out then too.
There is that, but you can only get like 30 good minutes out of that before their little hands start turning blue. So you have to spell yourself, go in, warm the fingers up, and then toss them back out. It's a good thought.
Excellent. Well, it is 2 minutes after 12, so why don't we get started? Welcome everybody to the Iowa City Noon Rotary. My name's Barb Thomas. I am your president this year. And with every meeting, we start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And so if you're able to stand, you can feel free to unmute your microphone if you'd like to, and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all. Great, thank you all. And now if you could actually mute your microphone, that would help us so that we don't have a lot of other additional noise happening during the meeting. So before we get started, although many of you are now complete Zoom experts, I am sure, but just in case, I'm going to turn it over to Devin for a few Zoom tips. Devin?
Thanks, President Barb. Zoom tips. First, your view. Right now, you can see either the speaker, me in large Technicolor, or you can see a gallery of other people who are in the meeting. I recommend for this part of the meeting, switch to gallery so you can see all those beautiful faces. And then when it gets to announcements and the presentation, switch to speaker view. And just also know that when a presenter has a PowerPoint up, if you've updated to the latest edition of Zoom, you can slide over how much you see of the presenter versus how much you see of the PowerPoint. So just keep an eye out for that. Another thing, if you could go to the chat, which if you're on a mobile device, you probably have to click through a couple different menus, but find the little chat as the little bubble icon, sign in to let us know that you're here, or if you have questions, or if there's anything you want to say. Then finally, if you go to the participants tab, you can see who else is here. And more importantly, there's a raise hand option when it comes to announcements or announcing guests or visiting Rotarians. That's what you want to use so that you pop to the top of the list and we can call on you in order. Back to you, President Barb.
Great, thank you so much, Devin. So we certainly appreciate all of you being here today. And with that, we do want to make sure that we welcome some of our guests. So if you're a guest, now you get to practice those Zoom skills, right? You get to go into the participant button and raise your hand. Or if you have some guests that you would like to introduce, you can do the same. And then Devin will actually call on you. So I'm going to send it back to Devin. Now I know we have a few visitors.
I welcome our visiting Rotarians, Gary Wickland, perennial visitor, and Steve Dakin, District Governor, joining us from Boone. I do not see, oh, Ryan Bell, go for it.
Hey guys, I've got Alex Friedrich again, a student at the University of Iowa who just loves our Rotary Club. So he keeps on joining and I keep on inviting him. So it's pretty cool. You want to say hi, Alex?
Hey everyone, happy Thursday. Good to be here again.
Welcome, Alex. Thanks for joining us. John Colshaw.
Thanks, Devin. I can't raise my hand, I think, because I'm a host. So
That'll do it.
thanks so much. So I've got a few guests that I'd like to welcome today. First of all, on behalf of Mary Reddick and myself, we'd like to welcome Susan Annette. Susan is actually a visiting Rotarian from Santa Monica, California. Susan is the retired head of public services at the Santa Monica Public Library. She's an Iowa alum and obviously a Rotarian. And she's here today with her husband, Timothy Benson. And Timothy is the curator for German Expressionist Studies at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, AKA LACMA, and also an alum of the UI. And we're glad that they're here today to listen in on our presentation topic. And then from the libraries, I'd like to welcome some of my colleagues, Mary and my colleagues. We have Margaret Gam, who's our head of special collections. Sarah Jacob Meyer Pinkham is our exhibition and engagement manager. And then Pete Balestrieri is our curator of science fiction and popular culture in special collections. And I'll tell you a little bit more about him later. So welcome to our friends and colleagues.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks, John. John Fraser, you have a guest.
Well, I'm being inappropriate. I don't really have a guest, but I told Barb I didn't need to make an announcement about the warm coat program. So my guest is the link to the warm coat program in the chat. Thank you.
Unique. We'll give you that. Thank you for that. And then Sarah Richardson, you have a guest.
Hello, Sarah Richardson. What a beautiful day. Nice to see everyone. My guest is Will Downing, who was here for the second time in 2 weeks and was a guest before. Will is an architect in town, father of 2 sons, very active in the nonprofit community, and a great neighbor.
Great. Welcome, Will. Glad to have you. Do you want to say hi?
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks, Sarah. And Sarah is also a fantastic neighbor.
Well, there you go. 2 good neighbors. It's the kind of Rotarians we want. That's everybody that I see. Anybody else who's here as a guest or visiting Rotarian? All right, back to you, President Barb.
Great, thanks so much, Devin, and welcome everyone. Glad to see that you are here and that you're able to join us today. So with that, we'll move into announcements. And so first, I'd like to go to our district governor, Steve Dakin, who joins us today. Steve?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, hopefully everybody is safe here with the higher numbers rising in Iowa with the COVID. So please stay safe and be aware. This Saturday at noon, we are having our foundation luncheon and we have Holger speaking live. So I'm looking really forward to that. We have over 70 signed up, and so please, if you haven't, please get on and be a part of the activities. And very good tongue-tied. Thank you. So thank you.
And so I'm going to follow that up with Vern Folkman. Vern, do you want to say a few more words about the foundation lunch?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Steve, for coming and giving us some inspiration on doing this. I'm the Rotary Foundation chair for this club, so I was going to just re-emphasize the fact that in the past we've always done this in person at some nice restaurant. We'd get a nice meal and a few nice cocktails, and so this will be a little bit different this year. But we do it. Would like anybody to come and anybody that's a Rotarian to come and enjoy the Zoom meeting that we're having on Saturday. Does conflict with the Iowa game a little bit, but maybe you could bust away from that for half an hour or so. And the way you do that is you need to register, and then they'll send you a acknowledgement back, and then once you get that, you can just click on it and you'll be at the meeting. So I have the link if you want to email me at vern@vernfolkman.com, or it's on the chat right now, and you can just go to that, click on it, and you'll be fine. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it gives us a little bit of information about what the District 6000 has done this past year, and some outstanding things that we have done. And so it's good for you to keep up on that. Also, I like the fact that the international president is going to be there in person speaking. You don't get to hear him speak in person very often, so that's another nice feature. So please come if you can. It's at 12 o'clock on Saturday. It'll last probably about an hour and a half, I think. Thanks.
Perfect. And what a great opportunity. As Vern said, it is the opportunity to hear from Rotary International President Holger Knack. So please join us. And it's kind of a bring your own lunch deal, right? You know, what a bargain. And to talk about another bring your own lunch deal, we're going to go to Anna Moyer-Stone. Anna?
Hello, everyone. I am here to remind you that the Joint Service Club Luncheon is next week. So that's next Thursday, November 12th at noon. It's here. So basically everything is the same, and it couldn't be easier. You just noon Thursday, same Zoom link as usual. And in the past, I mean, you've had to hear me talk too much. You had to buy a ticket. You had to remember where the ticket was. You had to ask me about what the lunch was and then be like, oh, we're having chicken again. But like, we don't do any of that. Like it makes it so much, you have to remember to wear something nice. Like you don't have to worry about any of that. You just come here, same Zoom link, like normal, noon on Thursday. The president of the University of Iowa, President Bruce Harold, will be speaking. We'll have some very interesting comments, I'm sure. And we will also be joined by our other friends in the local area service clubs. If you have any questions, please feel free to direct them to me. But otherwise, we will see you in the Zoom next Thursday at noon. Thanks.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much, Anna. We appreciate that. And it will be a cool meeting because we will have higher numbers. We'll have a lot of additional guests. So, and just think, you can use the chat feature and you can visit with your friends from the other various service clubs. So what a plus. Okay, next, I actually would like to ask, I believe that Ashley Hopkins is with us. As you know, I just want to double check and make sure Ashley is here. Yeah. Yes, she is. Great. So as you remember, our club kind of reached into our reserves in order to share some of the resources that we have with the nonprofits in the area that are actually struggling during the times of COVID. You know, it's harder for them to operate. It's harder for them to do fundraisers. It's a challenge for the nonprofits in our community. And so our board agreed to dip into our reserves and provide some resources. We partnered with the Community Foundation of Johnson County to do so. And one of the recipients is DVIP. And so Ashley is actually here to just tell us a little bit about their grant request. Ashley?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. So I'm the development coordinator at DVIP, and I had the pleasure of writing that grant. So that's why I'm here to talk about that today. Yes, so I just wanted to start off by saying that last year we did serve 1,900 people in our county service region and over 900 in Johnson County. Since the onset of COVID-19, we have remained open and operational with our 24/7 shelter and our hotline and advocacy services. So the grant that you have funded, thankfully so, is going towards an increase in services due to COVID-19. As you can imagine, that created additional isolation and stress. And we saw a 28% increase in our calls to our hotline since May of 2020. So the funds will go towards the unexpected costs that have come with that. In April, we had to make the tough decision to move 36 people out of our emergency shelter into apartments and hotel stays so that they could social distance and be safe, since our shelter is mostly a shared use space. And so that brought on many additional costs. Our emergency housing expenses went up by 76% over the last year. So with the help of this grant and actually another grant through the Community Foundation of Johnson County, as well as the Housing Trust Fund of Johnson County, we were able to accommodate that additional expense. And since then, we have brought people back into our shelter. We're at half capacity, but we're still housing outside of our shelter in hotels and apartments. And we've hired additional cleaning staff to sanitize throughout the entire day, all of those shared spaces. We created some partitioned walls in our communal spaces so that there could still be social distancing happening. And just really, really thank you for the funds to go towards that.
Well, that's great, Ashley. And really, we want to thank you because you are doing really great work in our community. And it is amazing to think about those additional challenges that you're facing in these times. So keep up the good work. We're here for you, and we're glad to support you. So next, I'd like to turn to Bill Oglesby. Bill's going to share a short video with you that shares one of the areas of focus, Rotary's areas of focus. So Bill, can you take it away? Okay, Bill. Is he here, Devin, do you think? He was here, but maybe he's not.
As far as I know.
There, do you hear me now?
Okay. Oh, now we can hear you. Great. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay.
The community of Delagrande is about over an hour and a half by very bumpy, very hilly, several incredibly steep hills. So really only all-terrain vehicles or Jeeps can get through there. My name is Jenny Huntley, and I'm a registered midwife from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I've been volunteering with Midwives for Haiti.
Pour nous protéger, nous exploiter plus. Investissez en nous, agissez pour notre malheur. Nous abusez plus. L'enfant pauvre, c'est pas maladie malade. Bonjour, bébé. Many women have told me they've come from quite a far distance, an hour, even a couple hours of walking. But women seem to really be drawn to having someone just do a quick assessment of them and feel their belly and hear the baby's heartbeat and hear that everything is going well. Being able to have someone say, yes, your health is important to us, and women are more likely to seek care when they've had care in the pregnancy. Because of the Jeep, we're going to be able to run these mobile clinics to include places like Delagran that we haven't been able to go to because of distance. The plan is that once a month, women will be able to be seen at these far-reaching places.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Bill.
Okay, back to you, President Barb.
Great. Thanks so much. So before we move on, I'm going to do a really quick Zoom poll for everybody. So I want you to be prepared because you're going to have to click a link, okay? So I'm going to launch this poll. It's actually a question about our Thursday, December 31st meeting. That's right. New Year's Eve is a Thursday, but you know, it's COVID time. Like, where are you going to be but home, right? So I want to get your opinion that for our December 31st meeting, would you prefer to, 1, cancel the meeting, 2, hold a regular meeting, or 3, hold a fun social event at the same time instead? So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds. Go in there, click, click, click. Tell me what you think. I'm watching the numbers move, and then I'll share it with you in just a minute. All right, about 70% of you have voted. Let's go, a little few more. And okay, I'm going to end the polling, and I'm going to share the results. So look at that. It's pretty darn close between cancel and have a fun social event. So what we may do is we may talk about this with the board and kind of with some other people and come up and see which way we go. If you have any strong thoughts about that, just email me and let me know. And that we're just trying to figure out kind of what should we do for that meeting. Do we cancel it so that you can watch football games, you know, but normally there's a lot of bowl games at Christmas time and New Year's, but guess what? Not this year. So maybe we have to do something different. Well, great. Before we go to our program, I do want to go to Linda Muston, and Linda is going to share with us her Rotary moment of gratitude and positivity. Linda?
Thank you, Barb. Well, actually, Barb asked me last summer if I would be willing to do a moment of positivity and gratitude. And at the time, I was very anxious about the election and the pandemic. So I said, Barb, why don't we give me November 5th? Because by then, I'm sure I'll be feeling a lot better. Well, now y'all see how that worked out. But as I gave me time to reflect, a lot of the gratitude that I have actually is to Ray and family members. We have 13 outstanding immediate family members that provide us subsistence and comfort. And just last weekend, our son Rex, who's an English teacher, posted something on Facebook. He's a pretty heavy social media user. But he posted this that I wanted to share with you. And this is the kind of example, the kind of reinforcement and positivity that I experience as a person and as a mother. Rick said, I'm planning on taking a break from Facebook unless I can put out one of the 3 Ps, photography, poetry, or positivity. I'm thinking that November would be a good month to focus on empathy for others. I challenge my friends and family to take this on as well, with the idea that we will go into Thanksgiving with different hearts. Less echo chamber and more humanity. Less me squealing and more we healing. Make this challenge your own. Just make it about unifying and filling others' buckets. We all have an extra hour to work with already. So that was very sustaining for me. So following Rex's example, I'd like to share a timely poem. Actually, it's a stanza from America the Beautiful, but it's always touched me a lot. And I know it'll be familiar to many of you. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet, whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat. Across the wilderness, America, America, God, mend thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. I hope this adds a little positivity to your day. I'm grateful to be an American. I'm grateful for family members, and I think I'd like to ask you all to accept Rex's challenge. Follow his suggestion and see what you can do about filling other people's buckets.
That is great, Linda. And actually, I think it couldn't be better timed, because this has definitely been a time of uncertainty. It has been a challenging week for many people as we deal with this range of emotion. And I think the things that we can do is to try to look for the good in people, to do good for others, to be grateful, to be positive. And I think all of those notes that you said really kind of hit home with what we need to be doing now. So thank you very much for sharing that. We're going to move to our program, but right before we do that, I do want to remind you that if you do want to do a little good in your community, you do have some options. You can contribute towards some warm coats. There's a link in the chat where you can do that. You could, join us for the foundation lunch, where you can hear more about what the district is doing. But, think about it. Think about how you can remain positive, grateful, helpful, look for the kindness, follow those notes from Linda's son, because those are really good thoughts for us to take forward. So, and with that, we will now move to our program, which I'm actually very excited to learn more about the special collection at the UI libraries. And for our introduction, we're going to go to John Colshaw, our Rotarian, who will do the intro. John?
Thanks, President Barb. Appreciate it. So if your email inbox is like mine, every once in a while, you receive a cold call email that, either it seems too good to be true, or it's spam, or you think, there's just no way that we'd be able to do this. Well, I received one of those emails back in 2018, and it was about something called the Sackner Archive of Concrete and Visual Poetry. So without stealing too much of Pete's thunder, let me just tell you that the Sackner Archive is the largest collection of concrete and visual poetry in the world, with over 65,000 pieces that are cataloged in a comprehensive database. In 2017, the archive was moved out of Miami due to Hurricane Irma and was relocated to a climate-controlled facility in New York. In 2019, the collection arrived at the University of Iowa Libraries here in our UNESCO City of Literature. Pete Balestrieri is the University of Iowa Libraries Curator of Science Fiction and Popular Culture. Like me and a few of us here in the club, Pete is a native Wisconsinite. If you know your 1980s music, especially your 1980s Wisconsin music, you'd be interested to know that Pete played the saxophone for a band called the Violent Femmes. He also has a long history working in libraries, from shelving books in the Milwaukee Public Library to being the steward and curator of the UI Library's nationally known science fiction and fanzines collections. I see Barb reacting. She must be a groupie. So today, Pete is here to tell the club why the Sackner Archive is such a perfect fit at the University of Iowa here in Iowa City. And he's going to share some examples that may encourage you to visit our exhibit in the main library before it closes in December. So Pete, thanks so much for being here, and welcome to Rotary.
Thank you so much, John, for that introduction. And I'm sure that Barb is a fan, perhaps, rather than a groupie. And I just want to say what a pleasure it is for me to be here, to be able to speak to you today. I think that the purchase of that Jeep to do that important work in Haiti, amazing. Just hearing about the Coat Project and some of the other things that Rotary is involved in. This is wonderful work. And so I applaud all of you for being part of an organization that does so much good in the world. I'm very happy to introduce a show that is just called Sackner Archive. And this is appearing right now inside of the main library in our main gallery. And the head of that gallery is with us today. That's Sarah. And Sarah, I'm blanking on your last name. I apologize. It's my elderly brain at work. I'm having a moment. But Sarah's with us today. And she is the one that's created the PowerPoint for me. Sarah Pinkham. Yes, I'm sorry, John. Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, Sarah. She's the one that's created the PowerPoint for me today, which is half the battle. John's given you a lot of the background on the archive. I'm going to talk to you about it. First of all, why do I have this iris, this sort of circular pattern for my video? I told some people earlier, it's because I kicked the cord of my laptop off of the makeshift standing desk I have at home. It hit the floor, and now this is what it does. So if you want to have a round screen like mine, just throw your laptop on the floor, and I guess that's the way to go with that. I am indeed the curator of science fiction and popular culture collections for special collections in the main library. You might wonder, well, why is he talking to us about this? We all wear many different hats, both John and Mary Rettig and Sarah, all of us, everyone who works at the library wears many hats, and we share all of the labor and the burdens. I have a background in art history, and I have a background as an artist and a poet, and combining those two ideas. So I actually have been very fortunate to be in some exhibitions with some of the artists that are featured in the Sackner Archive. And I've even got work in the Iowa Digital Library. So it was kind of a natural to pull me in on this. Very quickly, I just want to say that you probably all already know what concrete and visual poetry is, whether you're aware of it or not. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I've also been unable to share my screen with you. So Sarah's operating the PowerPoint. And so I'm going to ask, please, Sarah, can we move to the next slide? Wonderful. So here we see Ruth and Marvin Sackner. And Marvin Sackner and his wife Ruth were collectors who began in the late 70s to purchase work that they had seen, that they enjoyed. And as they began to learn more about concrete and visual poetry, they just kept collecting and collecting. Where was all of this art going? It was going into their house. So imagine, or their apartment rather, imagine 75,000 different items. And when they filled the apartment they were living in, they arranged to also have the apartment above them, and then they connected the apartments. They called this arrangement Home Suite Museum. You can see that the bedspread they're sitting on is covered with writing. They were so in love with this idea of combining writing and the visual that they collected bedspreads, plates, cups, anything that had the alphabet on it or sort of random assortments of words. The collection contains not just works of art, though many original works of art are part of this collection. There's also periodicals and magazines, rare art magazines. When it says typewritings in the slide, it means art created using typewriters. Letters, drawings, prints, ephemera, artists' books of all kinds. So this is a massive collection. And I can remember that when I first saw years ago that the collection was for sale, almost as a joke, I sent an email to my the then current head of special collections, Greg Prickman, who's now the head of the Folger Libraries in Washington, DC, and said, well, isn't this interesting that the Sackner's for sale? Of course, you know, we can't touch it. But as time went by and as Greg transitioned to his new position and was succeeded by my colleague, Margaret Gamm, who's now the head of special collections, Margaret and Tim Shipe, another one of my colleagues, the curator of the International Data Archive, among many other responsibilities, Tim and Margaret and I started to have conversations as we realized that the Sackners were having a bit of difficulty selling this collection. And I have to give the credit to Tim Shipe. Tim came up with an idea to have the Sackner collection moved here to Iowa City, to the library, and that it would remain here for a number of years until it became ours through donation. So that arrangement was incredibly attractive to Dr. Sackner. And he went ahead and through the hard work and the generosity of people like John Colshaw and Mary Rettig, and Margaret Gamm, Tim, myself, many others, a big team of players. The collection is now here with us and will remain here. So you see the Sackners smiling. They're very happy. This was a loving couple. They collected these things not so much for investment, but for fun. They put together the greatest collection of this work in the world. And I can tell you that I became interested in art and poetry when I was in high school. And I can remember back to some of the first examples of work that's in the Sackner archive. And I would see these things in art magazines and art books, and always the same citation, Sackner archive. So without knowing what it was or who they were, I've been aware of the Sackner archive since high school. Next slide, please, Sarah. Okay, so concrete poetry. Concrete poetry, very simply, you see a definition there that you can look at, an arrangement of linguistic elements in which typographical effect is more important than traditional lines in conveying meaning. So imagine letters of the alphabet, sometimes enlarged until they fill the whole page, sometimes flying around the page, sometimes just parts of letters. These are the kinds of things we see in advertising, the covers of magazines, of books, of all kinds of things all the time. But when you look at the picture that's there, and this is the cover of a magazine created by German artist Kurt Schwitters. And if you look at it says Merz, M-E-R-Z, and underneath the Z, you see a kind of a strange symbol there. Is it an N that leans to the right with a thickened center portion, or is the dot that's above the center portion of the N, does that transform that center portion into an I? Well, both things are happening simultaneously. And what does it mean? Well, who knows? So it's this arrangement of the letters of the alphabet or other kinds of typographical or linguistic elements, floating around the page, combined in ways that we don't expect. That thing that we're looking at there, if you can see, it's dated 1923. This, corresponds with the movement that Tim is the curator of, which is Dada. It's an anti-art movement that started after World War I in Europe and then spread around the world. It was short-lived, and many of the Dada artists transformed into surrealist artists. But this thing continues and continues. In the 50s. It becomes called concrete poetry by brothers and their friends in Brazil, the De Campos brothers, members of the Noi Grandes group, and spreads again from there all over the world and becomes an international movement. Now, visual poetry on the other side, this is something that everyone I think is familiar with, at least has seen something like this once in their life. Basically, these are shaped poems. So these are poems where the words on the page take on the shape of something that's involved in the content or the meaning of the poem. So in this comes down to us from ancient times. So in ancient times, someone might write a poem about war, and the poetry might be in the shape of a spearhead or a shield. It might be about love, and so it might be in the shape of a heart. So the idea of shaped poems has been going on a long time. The one that we see here, these are individual pieces of paper, and what's been printed on them, you can see, is this sort of vaguely circular shape. Well, all of these individual pieces of paper were all cradling an ostrich egg, a real ostrich egg, and that ostrich egg is covered with hand-printed words. And so the egg with the writing on it, the pieces of paper with the circular, again, these are all examples of shaped poetry and visual poetry, where you have visual elements and poetry combined. Sometimes in really startling ways. Visual poetry can pretty much cover an enormous range of things. Concrete poetry as well. The two ideas, visual and concrete poetry, are really fluid. So there's no hard and fast definition. And I like to say that the Sackners themselves, because of the size of their collection and their collecting practice, have expanded the boundaries over the decades of what is concrete poetry, what is visual poetry. So let's go ahead and move on, please. Next slide. Okay, arrival. We've talked about this already, how the collection came to us. We have been working diligently since the collection came to provide access to it. We are getting so close. We now have a database that we're ready to roll out that was constructed from the Sackner's database. It will be in our special collection finding aids, online, available to anybody in the world. We are, well, since January, we've been receiving nonstop requests for scans of things and information, people interested in coming to use the Sackner. We're trying to get all that ready just as fast as we can. And when that is all in place, there is going to be a steady stream of researchers and students of all kinds coming to Iowa City to look at this collection. The picture that you're looking at, this artist was instrumental in advancing ideas of visual poetry. His name is Tom Phillips. And he was a favorite of the Sackners, who began collecting his work very early on. He started in 1970 on a work that he kept changing and doing new editions of right up to 2016. And the Sackners collected all of this. So we now have all of this in the archive. And what you can see is that Tom Phillips took a book that he just bought for a few shillings, a British artist, or at least he bought the book in England for a few shillings. This was a work from 1892 by a man named W.H. Mallock called The Human Document. Tom Phillips took that book and began to paint his way through it, and sometimes creating, really interesting pictures, sometimes blocking out all but a certain group of words that he selected to create a new poem on every page running through this book. That's the thing that we're looking at, and you'll see a lot of examples of that in the show. Can we move to the next slide, please, Sarah? Okay, so if you came to see the show, and you can do that, and we'll talk about that at the end. If you came, as you walk into the gallery, you see a lot of what was put there by Tim Scheib, who I've mentioned before. Tim did the heavy lifting of presenting what we have in the Sackner that relates to the origins of concrete poetry and visual poetry. And one of my assignments was to find things that would have connections to U of I's different schools and colleges, and to the broad curriculum that you can find here. So you can see numbers of different things. You can see an artist, a book where the pages are screwed down to a metal base. And again, many words have been crossed out. Some have been left as they were to create a completely new reading. And there's a stethoscope attached, so relating to medicine. The one to its right is a book by the German artist Hanne Darboven, one of my favorites. This is one of those rare opportunities when I just got to put a lot of my favorites, favorite artists from the Sackner show into the exhibit, because Sackner archive into the exhibit, because I was one of the curators. So Hanne Darboven, who created her own system of mathematics and her own system of writing, to be able to create just a whole world where she explores time and space and the passage of time. You see some printed works there hanging on the wall. These are large prints relating to history by an artist named Laffoley. And then I've got other things in there, like the picture in the lower right-hand corner. You can see how a lot of these visual poets would take things that we take for granted. So business cards in a typical business card holder that you might have on a desk, but it's a work of art called Industrial Sabotage number 47. And these 35 cards all have something written on them. Or you can see that there's a small nameplate in back that someone might have on their desk with their title. It should say Managing Director. But in the same way that we saw that Tom Phillips is messing around with the words, he took the title, The Human Document, and turned it into his work, The Humument. And the same thing was done here by the Australian artist, Richard Tipping. He changes Managing Director to Man, Aging, Direct, Or. What does that mean? Again, very fluid. Who knows? He's creating possibilities for meaning. You see these matchbooks, or you can barely see the matchbooks, but those are matchbooks, something that for years and decades carried advertising. But the artist Barbara Kruger changed that and had her collages printed on the matchbook covers. And her work combines collages that she creates with short aphorisms or sayings that are usually very provocative and cause people to think a lot. So you'll see all different kinds of examples of visual poetry and concrete poetry in the show. The back wall filled with these connections to the curriculum. And then as you pass out and see the final wall of the gallery, those are filled with artist books of all kinds. Artist books being combinations of both visual art and very often poetry or other kinds of texts, and the visual elements being just as important, the construction of the book being just as important as the content of the book, and both of those things kind of playing off of each other. So we tried as much as possible to put as many sorts of things, but there's no way that any show like this until we have a lot more time to dig into these 75,000 different items. There's no way that we could do more than just have a tip of the iceberg sort of introduction. And that's what we tried to do with the exhibit. Next slide, please, Sarah. Marvin Sackner recently passed away. This is so sad for all of us because Dr. Sackner had planned to come to visit the exhibit. He was very excited about that, as we were, and it would have been such a great opportunity. We talked to him and showed him things that were going to be in the exhibit. He was excited. His daughter, Sarah, I believe, will come when it's more appropriate for her, and we'll see the exhibit. But it's a tragic missed opportunity, and I only had about 1,000 questions that I wanted to ask Dr. Sackner about their collection practice, and yeah, so just very sad, but we're so grateful to Dr. Sackner for agreeing to our proposal and giving us the opportunity to bring this amazing collection to Iowa City, to the library, and now to be able to provide access to the whole world. Next slide, please. So how to visit the main library gallery. As you can see here, you can visit by appointment, you can come in person. Sarah, how many people can come and visit at one time?
We can have 16 total at one time, and we can do bookings of individuals or small groups. So I'd encourage you to do that if you're interested.
Boy, that's great. And you can see here that we've put this URL in here. Really just contacting the library information would connect you probably to someone either through the service desk, or you could contact either Sarah or myself if you need more information. But online, Sarah has created some just excellent online resources to help us through this pandemic period. And oh, thank you so much, Barb, for putting that in the chat. So online, you'd be able to see curator highlights in a mini virtual exhibit. There are short book videos. There's a documentary film that is just wonderful that would go into great detail explaining to you just what concrete and visual poetry are and giving you lots of examples. There's a complete exhibition guide that gives you the information about every single one of the things that are in the exhibit. And there's also a collection of articles and blog posts. So please, if you're interested, avail yourself of these wonderful online resources. I'm happy to talk about this at any time. We are in the building in special collections at least 2 days a week. Tim's schedule is going to be changing very quickly as he has to quarantine with his wife, who's going to be undergoing some things for her health. But please, any questions?
Great. So if we have any questions, if you'd like to raise your hand, I think, Sarah, you could probably stop sharing the screen. Thank you very much. Really fascinating. I do find that interesting. If I make that appointment, I do want to ask, do I go to the door that is like the closest to the School of Journalism? Is it on the Art Museum side? What door would be the best door for entry after I make my appointment to see the exhibit?
I think that you could come in that door that is, as you say, right across from the School of Journalism. That would be the north entrance.
Great.
At the moment, that is the primary entrance to the library. So if you make an appointment, the inquiries will come to me, and I will help you through so that you make sure you know where to come in and what to wear and all that as far as masks go.
Excellent. Great. And it looks like we have a question from John Kenyon. John?
Yeah, hi, Pete. I wanted to ask.
Nice to see you, John.
Looking at the collection, what is the role of technology? Can you see the march of progress on technology as it relates to the work that is being done in there? What artists and poets are able to accomplish?
That's a great question, and you can see that. Though the show is, small, it does definitely take you through a path of the earliest works, a lot of which were just, printed in printing shops. That's a lot of what comes from the post-World War I work, and then it keeps expanding. And some things, it's funny because the technology almost goes backwards for a while. As people began to create more of the artist books, they got into more things like woodblock prints, hand printing of all kinds. A lot of it is manuscript, which means they're just writing the words and drawing pictures by hand. But you'll also see things in there that a lot of work typewriter, by electric typewriter, and then things like printer work. So I know that I'm not sure if we put any of it into the exhibit, but I think people are familiar from the 80s and from the 90s with, well, if you're old enough like I am, you remember that some people began to create visual images using those old dot matrix printers. And so you have these enormous, long joined sheets of paper, and it could be almost any kind of an image, but the whole picture is made up of either letters or symbols from the typewriter, the keyboard, I should say. So as the technology has continued to develop and expand, visual poets and concrete poets are some of the first ones to jump into this. Just this weekend in the New York Times, in the New York Times review section of the Sunday Times, there was an image of a bridge in Manhattan, and the artist Jenny Holzer has put enormous, and she works a lot with LED advertising signs. But for this work, she has huge illuminated letters on the side of one of the bridges that says moral injury. So I think that's her comment on the Times. And yeah, the technology has really kept up, and so have the artists with it.
Great.
Good question.
Well,
Nice to see you.
thank you very much, Peter. I wanted to let you know that in honor of your presentation here with us today, our club will actually make a donation to Rotary International's Polio Plus program in your name. And that donation will actually be matched 2-to-1 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and will provide 70 vaccinations to people around the world. So thanks to you for a great program.
I'm really humbled by that and very grateful. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you.
We appreciate you speaking. And yes, I am a fan of the Violent Femmes. I saw you perform at the Vic in Chicago in like late 1980s, early 90s.
Yeah. Oh no, I remember that. We played here in Iowa City too. And I always like to tell people that when we played it in the student union here at the U of I, we tried telling them before the show that they weren't going to be able to have people sitting in folding chairs, that those folding chairs would probably be stood on and be damaged. And they didn't believe us. And the show was sold out, and students immediately began to stand on those chairs. Then they began to jump up and down on those chairs. And after the show, the custodians had to sweep haystacks of broken chairs together before they could be hauled out and disposed of. So I've been coming to Iowa City for a long time, and it's been a pleasure to live here for the last 20 some odd years. And yeah, thanks so much. That show at the Vic was fantastic. If I
It
remember.
was fantastic. I had a great time. I love that blister in the sun. You know, I gotta say I was a fan. So
Yeah.
it probably dates me. So surprise everybody.
Me too.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Peter. We appreciate it. Thanks to everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Reminder that next week is our Joint Service Club event. And so we will be joined by many people, and we will hear from University of Iowa President Bruce Harold. And so if there is no other business before the club, you can actually unmute your microphones if you'd like to and join me in the four-way test. Of all of the things that we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it
to all
Better friendships. Is it beneficial for all concerned?
Beneficial to all concerned.
So thank you all. Have a wonderful Thursday. Enjoy the sunshine and the warm weather. And truly appreciate you all being here.